Namaskar. I am Radha Vallabh Tripathi. From tomorrow onwards, I will be speaking before you, discussing the text of Natya Shastra. Today, that is on the 3rd of October, I have appeared before you. I have staged a type of entry that is called Apatikshepa Pravesha in the terminology of Natya Shastra. That means the entry of a character on the stage, the unannounced entry of a character on the stage. So I have appeared in an unannounced way before you because I wanted to discuss certain issues related to Natya Shastra that perhaps are necessary to be known before we proceed to discuss the text of Natya Shastra. For the past 50 years, I have been trying to unravel the mystery of Natya Shastra. I have been trying to study Natya Shastra, the text of it, and as the things happen now, I can only call myself a humble student of Natya Shastra. I passed my MA post-graduation in 1970, and after that I got interested in Natya Shastra. I tried to read the text myself in my own way. The text was not prescribed in our curriculum. Natya Shastra has not been a part of our curriculum when we were students, and things have not very much changed since those all along during the last 50 years. And Natya Shastra, as I see it, it remains a neglected branch of study. It is not an unimportant discipline. It is a very important discipline, but somehow it could not find a right place in our curricula. And this is something we are not going to discuss. There may be many reasons for this. But in my own way, I have tried to understand Natya Shastra. I unfortunately couldn't learn it with any guru. And I tried to be my own guru, you can say that way. And I have, I have a remake of one of the verses of Gita for myself for this. We are living in the times of remaking. Old songs are being remade. So, parodizing a line from Gita, I can say, Atmaiva Yatmanas Shishya, Atmaiva Yatmano Guru. We our own I myself am my own disciple, and I myself am my own guru, you can say. So Natya Shastra, as I see it now, appears to me like a vast ocean, and I am only standing on the seashore, watching its waves, sometimes watching its high and low tides, and I have not plunged into this vast sea. And even then, a kind of understanding of Natya Shastra, even by studying it on my own, I could develop. And with that, I would be discussing certain core issues that we ought to know before we study the text of Natya Shastra. First thing is, what is Natya Shastra? Natya Shastra, as you all know, is the name of a text, and the meaning of Natya Shastra is Natyasya Shastram, Natya Shastram. The Shastra of Natya is Natya Shastra. Then we should know what is Natya and what is Shastra. If the Shastra of Natya is Natya Shastra, then what is the concept of Shastra and what is the concept of Natya? Natya has various connotations. Etymologically, we can say Natanam Samuha Karmava, the group of actors or their activities can be termed as Natya. And Natya, as it is viewed in the Natya Shastra, as we will see a day after tomorrow when we take up the first chapter, is described as a Veda. Natya is a Veda. At least 13 or 14 times in the very first chapter of Natya Shastra, the term Natya Veda occurs. The very second stanza or the third stanza of the first chapter, Natya Veda Katham Utpanna. How this Natya Veda was born, how this Natya Veda originated. This is the question raised before Bharat Muni. And after that, so many times Natya Veda. Brahma says that I will create Natya Veda. So Natya has been described as a Veda repeatedly in Natya Shastra. Veda is eternal knowledge. So the concept is that Natya has been with the human race, with the human beings, right from the inception of this creation, even before its creation, from the Anadi Kala, from the times immemorial. Natya has been with us. It is eternal knowledge. A Veda is eternal knowledge, Shashvata Jnana, and it is the Nitya Pravaha, a continuous flow of that knowledge, as Abhinav Gupta terms it. So the continuous flow of knowledge, an eternal kind of knowledge of a particular discipline that is practiced by the natas, the performers, you can say. And even sometimes the poet is also a creator of Natya, because he writes poetry that is to be staged or performed. So he is also included. So the practice of Kavi and Nata, that is Natya, and that comes to us as in the form of an eternal knowledge. It is a kind of creative urge, and it remains with the humanity. Always it remains with the humanity, you can say. That is the concept. So Natya is a Veda. That is one concept of Natya Shastra. But if Natya is a Veda, in what way it differs from other Vedas? There may be other Vedas, like we know there are 4 Vedas, like Veda, Yajurveda, Samveda, Atharvaveda, and so many other types of Vedas are also described in the tradition. We are not going to discuss them. So if Natya is a Veda, then it is a different kind of Veda. So therefore it is said in the very first chapter that we will be reading on 5th, Vedam Anyat Tata Srakshe. I will be creating a different type of Veda, Brahma declares. And gods also request him, Tasmat Sraj Aparam Vedam. Please create another Veda. The 4 Vedas which are known to us, they are not useful for all sections of the society. They do not serve the purpose for each and every member of the society. We need another Veda. So it is a different kind of Veda. And what kind of, in what way it differs is Sarvarnika Panchamo Veda. Tasmat Sraja Param Vedam Panchamam Sarvarnikam. It is Sarvarnik Panchama Veda. It is the 5th Veda, which is Sarvarnik, that is, it belongs to each and every member of the society. It belongs to all the Varnas. It is for all. The gateway of Natya is open to all. So it doesn't shut its door for a particular section of the society. Like the other Vedas, they may be for the Dvijas, but this is the Veda and it is for all. So this is the idea of Natya, which we have a general rough kind of idea, but then Bharat Muni proceeds to define what is Natya. And there he says, this definition also we will read it. Yoyam subhavo lokasya sukadukha samanvita so angadya vinayo peto natyamittya vidhiyate. Very comprehensive definition of Natya, involving its structure, the whole design, perception, purpose of Natya also, and the very nature of Natya. So lokas swabhava, the very nature of the people of the world, which is imbued by happiness and unhappiness, sukha and dukkha, when it is delineated on the stage through angik, vachik, satvik and aharya abhinayas, angadya abhinaya, through all the four types of abhinayas, then it becomes Natya. But then this definition is also not sufficient. In the Shastra tradition, when they make an analysis of a definition, they point out several deficiencies. So the definition lacks. It may have ati vyapti, avyapti. It may be a wider definition. It may be a narrow definition. It may be a definition which does not perfectly apply to the category being defined. So ati vyapti, avyapti, and asambhav, these are the three blemishes of a definition. So Bharat Muni proceeds to define Natya in another way. Trailokyasya sarvasya natyam bhavanukirtanam. It is more minute and subtle kind of definition, that Natya is a bhavanukirtan, because lokas swabhava may be produced, may be presented through angik, vachik, satvik in other forms also. But what Natya has it, bhavanukirtan of Triloki. It is retelling. Anukirtan is retelling, telling again of the bhavas, the states of life, the avasthas of being, the states of being, the states of evolution of this creation, you can say. So all these states of Triloki, not this world, but all the three worlds. So there is a world that has been there, that belongs to past. There is a world we see now, and there is a world which may emerge. So it is Anukirtana of all the three lokas, all the three worlds. So it involves a multi-layered structure of time and space, you can say. It is a structure involving the Kala, you can say. So this is a more subtle kind of definition, and we will try to explore this definition when we proceed, when we deal with the text. But then Brahma, when he creates Natya, as we see through a mythological narrative, Bharat Muni describes how Natya was created in the beginning. So Brahma says, Karma bhavan vaya pekshi natya vedo maya krita. Natya stands in relation to karma and bhava. It has apeksha for karma and bhavas. It requires actions, karmas, and it requires bhavas. So a synthesis of karma and bhava is Natya. That is another definition. And I'm just presenting these things before you so that you can consider them, and when we discuss the text, you may form your own ideas. You may differ with me, with my approach as well. So because Abhinav Gupta has given an entirely different interpretation to this line, karma bhavan vaya pekshi, and I understand it in a different way, because karma is being described by Bharat Muni in Natya Shastra, and bhavas are also being described by Bharat Muni in Natya Shastra. So we should understand these terms in the context of the Shastra itself. Why do we bring concepts from other Shastras? So karmas are there, the actions performed by the natas, and bhavas are also there, which are delineated by a nata or performer. So Natya requires karma and bhava. This is another way to describe Natya. Then Bharat describes several processes which involve the manifestation of Natya, the externalization of Natya. Natya remains inside and it comes out, it is expressed, it is externalized. So we can say that Anukirtan, Anukarana, and Anudarshana, these are the stages. So these terms would occur. In the very first chapter, these terms occur. So you may form a rough sort of idea about them. Anukirtan is telling again. The poet picks up a narrative and he or she tells it again. The narratives may be there, they may be created by him. So a narrative created by him within himself or herself is told again by him for an audience. It is written on paper, you can say, or it is narrated to the natas so that they can perform. That is a form of natya that is come out through Anukirtana, telling again. Then Anukarana, it is redoing. Anu is for again. So Anukarana, Karana is doing. So redoing. A nata or performer does it again. So whatever has happened is being done again, is being recreated, you can say. So we will discuss it as it appears to me that there is a Vedic worldview that percolates all these concepts. And finally, it goes through Anudarshana. It is being revisualized. It is being re-seen by the audience. So because the audience has Natya within themselves and they recreate it and then they see it again on the stage within, you can say, as Abhinav Gupta very beautifully expresses it. So Natya, for its manifestation, undergoes through this triple process of Anukirtana, Anukarana, and Anudarshana. This is one way. Or you can say another way of seeing Natya. Then there are other concepts. But I would like to say, before we take other concepts, that Natya Shastra is a unique text. And it is one of the most voluminous compendium on the art of drama, on aesthetics, theater, dance, music, and performing arts. It involves so many disciplines. And more than 2000 years before it was compiled or composed, maybe 2500 years. And till this day, it remains the most comprehensive encyclopedic work on Indian theater, traditional Indian theater, and the art of drama, dance, music, musicology also, and aesthetics and literary theory as well. So whenever I am asked to deliver a lecture on Natya Shastra before an audience who is not so very well acquainted with the text, I usually make a sort of a wild kind of generalized proclamation. And I say that if I'm asked to name 5 texts from ancient Sanskrit literature which have contributed to the making of world culture and which have built up the foundations of Indian culture as well, I would say that Rig Veda, chronologically also Rig Veda comes first. Rig Veda, then Valmiki's Ramayana, then Mahabharata, Vyasa's Mahabharata, and then Kautilya's Arthashastra, and then last but not the least, Natya Shastra. Natya Shastra is named at the end by me as the 5th text, not because it is less important. Chronologically, it comes after Rig Veda, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Kautilya's Arthashastra. The text as we have it, Natyashastra as a Shastra existed even before a Bharat Muni authored this text. But the text as we have it, and that text has contributed enormously to the making of Indian culture and to the cultures in other countries also. I have been to Thailand for 3 years. I was there as visiting professor, and I could see that in Thai theatre, in the traditional theatre, in the Ram Leela, they perform karnas and angharas. On the temples there, karnas are depicted. On Perambudur temple, we find karnas. Karnas are described in the 4th chapter. We will take it up. And in other countries also, in all the 10 Southeast Asian countries, some way or other, Natyashastra, the whole tradition of Natyashastra, which started from the text of Bharat Muni, that has spread, that has percolated. And if you go to Japan, in Noh theatre, and Giami, who was one of the greatest masters of Japanese theatre, he has written a book in Japanese that is available in English, and the art of Saragaku. About the art of Saragaku or the Japanese theatre, he says, the very first sentence in his book is that the art of Saragaku, our theatre, so far as I know, came to our country from the land of Buddha. So, somehow or other, even Chinese theatre, the traditional Chinese theatre, Asian theatric traditions have thrived, have developed because of a sweeping impact of this great text that was authored by Bharat Muni. But unfortunately in India, the text was lost in the medieval period. It became almost extinct, and we didn't have memories of the text even so far as in the northern belt of our country. In southern parts of the country, in some remote corners, there were Chakyars, the actors, the traditional actors of Kerala theatre who were teaching Natyashastra. They had the text also. Otherwise, Natyashastra disappeared from our curriculum. And when I was a student, there was no Natyashastra in our curriculum. The Shrupaka was the text which we were taught in our MA syllabus as students of Sahitya group in MA. Otherwise, there was no Natyashastra. So Natyashastra till 1960, 1970, 1980 remained very much a neglected branch of study in our curriculum, and this happened right from medieval ages. Somehow the text was lost. And 19th century is a wonderful period. It started towards the end of 18th century, of course, but it happened. Wonderful things happened in 19th century. It was such a period, the period of Renaissance, that we discovered so many things. We rediscovered so many things. I am told that I came to know that there are performing artists in the group that I will be meeting from tomorrow onwards, in the learned audience that have joined our workshop on Natyashastra. So all of you might be knowing that Bharatanatyam had been lost, and the living traditions of Bharatanatyam were no more there till some Rukmini Arundel rediscovered it, and it was being practiced by the Devdasis, and it was called Dasiyattam, or the Sadir Nratya it was called. So Rukmini Arundel resurrected it, and she gave it the name of Bharatanatyam, to a dignified name, to give it a dignified status, because some prostitutes or Devdasis were practicing it, that it had sunk so low, and it only existed in that community. Such a great art. Similar thing happened with Odyssey, and some Kelucharan Mahapatra recreated it, rebuilt the whole system of Odyssey on the basis of sculptures in traditional Kerala, traditional Orissa temples. Same thing happened with Mohiniyattam, and some Vallattol or some Nratya Guru in Kerala, he discovered it. Otherwise, Mohini rediscovered it. Otherwise, Mohiniyattam was being practiced by some courtesans or prostitutes. But in 19th century, these traditional art forms, which were otherwise lost from the elite society and which were no more being taught as a part of our curricula, they were rediscovered, they were resurrected. And the same thing happened with Natya Shastra. So there is a long story, and Natya Shastra was not such a simple thing as Bharatnatyam, or it is not a single form. It involves so many forms and so many disciplines also, and its rediscovery makes a long story, the process of its rediscovery. And there was some William Jones who landed in Kolkata in 1784 as the senior magistrate of Kolkata Supreme Court, and he was a linguist and orientologist and a great scholar, very talented type of man, and he learned Sanskrit, and he came to know that there is a play called Abhigyan Shakuntalam. He published that play with English translation. 1789 his edition of Shakuntal with English translation came out. That was an event that changed the whole world culture, the whole scenario all around the world. I have my reasons to believe that world was not the same the day Abhigyan Shakuntalam, edited by Sir William Jones, was published. It reached Goethe in English, from English translation into German translation. Goethe was enamored by going through that German translation of English translation, and he wrote a poem on it. And then it is said that the whole tradition of European Romantic poetry was somehow directly or indirectly influenced by Kalidasa. And even in India, Shakuntala became the Kalidasa Shakuntala became an icon. It became a metaphor for a kind of renaissance, for the feeling of a revival. And William Jones, in the preface of Abhigyan Shakuntalam, his edition said that I came to know that there is a work called Natya Shastra, but I couldn't get any manuscript of it. Had I read that Natya Shastra, I could have better understood this play. In 1826, H.H. Wilson, who was professor in Oxford University, he published his specimen of Hindu theatre. There also in the preface he said that manuscripts of Natya Shastra are not available, and we do not have knowledge of the theories of dramaturgy based on which these plays being translated by me were written. So the scholars who have got the manuscript of some plays till the middle of 19th century, they don't have Natya Shastra, but they feel that there was a work called Natya Shastra. Had we got the manuscripts of that Natya Shastra, we could have better appreciated the Sanskrit drama, the aesthetic traditions that form the base, the foundations of Sanskrit theatre or these plays, the Sanskrit plays. So there was a search for the manuscripts of Natya Shastra, and we see that then there was Fritz Edward Hall, who got the manuscript of Dashrupaka and who got some manuscript of Natya Shastra. He tried to read Natya Shastra. It was not a simple, easy job to read Natya Shastra, to understand it. But somehow he could include a few chapters of Natya Shastra in his edition of Dashrupaka. That edition of Dashrupaka by Fritz Hall is still referred. It's a good book. But the chapters which Fritz Edward Hall included in his edition of Dashrupaka published in 1865, they are outdated now. And after that, fresh manuscripts were unearthed, and there are more attempts to prepare better editions of some of the chapters. So Paul Reynaud, a French scholar, published a few chapters, 15th and 16th chapters of Natya Shastra in 1880. Then he came out with sixth and seventh chapters of Natya Shastra also. That happened in 1880. In 1888, Grosset, another French scholar, he prepared a critical edition of 14 chapter, but then he came out with critical edition based on 5 manuscripts of 14 chapters of Natya Shastra. That edition is very good, and I could lay my hands on it. It was published in 1888, around 1888, and that Grosset did a lot of commendable work. But complete Natya Shastra was not available to us till the last quarter of 19th century, you see. And it was in 1894 that Kavimala edition of Natya Shastra came out. That comprised the complete text of Natya Shastra, all the 36 or 37 chapters of Natya Shastra. Although Kavimala edition is not a good edition, it is very corrupt at several places. But for the first time, a complete text of Natya Shastra based on some manuscript, perhaps 2 manuscripts, was published. And after that, after that, only 1 century, 1.25 of a century has passed since our knowledge of Natya Shastra. And even during this period, even during this 1 century, Natya Shastra has assumed an importance in the world of art, culture, in the world of theatre. And there are theatre personalities who are drawn towards Natya Shastra. So this search for Natya Shastra, this struggle to create a good edition of Natya Shastra continued. The Baroda edition came out in 1926. The first volume was published, and other volumes came out in 1934, 1954, and 1964, respectively. Meanwhile, Kashi Sanskrit edition was also published by Pandit Baldev Upadhyay, and translation with edition of Natya Shastra brought out by Manmohan Ghosh. Then some editions, some other editions with English translations and Hindi translations came out. But the acquaintance of modern world with Natya Shastra is almost 1 century old. And this rediscovery of Natya Shastra during the past century has been one of the most thrilling, most exciting, and one of the most important events in our cultural history. That is what I believe. I firmly believe. There is no time to discuss what changes Natya Shastra brought in our cultural scenario. That would become another story. But to come to the text of Natya Shastra has 36 or 37 chapters. 37 because the last chapter, that is 36th, is split in 2 parts. Perhaps it was done by Abhinavagupta or his gurus, and they had their own reasons to do so. We will discuss them. There are 36 categories in Shaiva philosophy, and 37th is over and above all these 36 categories. That is Anuttara. So Abhinavagupta interprets the whole Natya Shastra on the lines of Shaivism, Shaiva Gamas, and he correlates each and every chapter of Natya Shastra with these categories respectively. So he insists that there are 37 chapters without making any difference. The stanzas and their number and order remains the same. There are about 6,000 stanzas in Natya Shastra. We will be reading those stanzas. Verses are there, but some prose part is also there, and some axioms, you can say, or aphorisms, sutras are also there. So this is the structure of Natya Shastra. And Natya Shastra, during the last 2000 years in our tradition, even when it was lost, it was being referred by the acharyas as a source book, as an akar grantha. So it has continued as a source book in our aesthetic tradition, in our tradition of literary theory, and Bharat Muni is always remembered as the Param Guru, you can say, as an authority who cannot be transgressed, who has to be followed. So Bharata Matam Etat, Pandit Raj Jagannatha says that we cannot violate the dicta of Bharat Muni. Till 17th century, 18th century, the Acharyas remember Bharata as the final authority on any literary theory, on any aesthetic theory. So about Mahabharata, it is said that whatever that is in India, in Bharatvarsha, that is in Mahabharata, and whatever that is not in Mahabharata is not in India also. Dharme charthe cha kame cha mokshe cha bharatarshava yadi hasti tadanyatra yan nehasti na tat kvachit. This is the stanza that occurs in Adi Parvan of Mahabharata, and it is very well known in the tradition. So it is a saying about the Mahabharata. So I have also prepared a remake of this stanza, and I believe that Bharat Muni stands as a Vyasa in the whole art tradition in our country. As Vyasa, the author of Mahabharata, stands as the authority on dharma. In the same way, in the world of aesthetics and art and literary theory, drama and theatre, Bharat Muni stands as a Vyasa. So I can have created a parody, a sort of parody of that stanza. Natye Gite cha kavyeva, Natye Gite cha kavyecha yadva shilpa kala sucha, yadi hasti tadanyatra, yan nehasti na tat kvachit. In the realm of Natya, theatre, Gita, music, Kavya, and Shilpa Kalas, all the arts and crafts, whatever that is in Natya Shastra is in our Indian tradition, and whatever that is not in Natya Shastra may not be there in our tradition as well. So that I have dealt with the concept of Natya, and what is Shastra. The Shastra of Natya is Natya Shastra. So Natya, we have discussed what is Natya, and the text is about Natya. So what is Shastra? Shastra, the term Shastra has two explanations, Shashanat Shastram and Shanshanat Shastram. So it has dual function. It regulates. It does the function of Shashana, that is regulating. So it is prescriptive. It prescribes the rules to be followed. That is also Shastra. And Shanshana, that is description. So it describes the practices. It describes the practices of Natas, the best practices of the Natas. That also Bharat Muni describes, and the regulations based on those practices, that you should do that. So such things are being practiced. This is the practice. In this way also he would narrate, his narrative proceeds, and he will also regulate the whole system. He has reorganized the whole system which was available to him from times immemorial, and Natya Shastra was there. A kind of Shastra of Natya was there even before Bharat Muni. Maybe some millennia had passed when Bharat Muni started speaking about this Natya Shastra, and that became a text. So the whole tradition of Natya has been reorganized in this text, and it has served as a source book for the past 2000 years, for the past 2 millenniums in our country. Therefore, Natya Shastra as a text is also very much important. And Natya Shastra, as we will see when we proceed to read the text, we will see that it involves so many disciplines. Dramaturgy, that is there, the structure of drama, the art of drama that is discussed, aesthetics, literary theory, literary criticism that is also discussed, stagecraft, the Natya Mandapa or theatre and its architecture that is also described, stage designing, Abhinaya, that is very much a part of Natya Shastra, music and musicology, dance, language, grammar and linguistics. These are also very essential disciplines which Bharat Muni takes up in Natya Shastra, an actor has to learn. The language he would be speaking when he would perform, then he has to learn the grammar and he has to learn the linguistics and also the prosody, the Chanda Shastra. So Bharat Muni insists that you should learn language properly. So in 14th chapter, we will see that he starts with alphabet. This is the alphabet for Sanskrit. Every actor should know if he is doing Sanskrit theatre. Then other concepts of grammar also, other categories of grammar also you should know. Otherwise, he would not become a good performer unless he masters language and linguistics also. So the whole grammar of the language and then Chanda Shastra, prosody, because he has to master the rhythm, the tempo, and know the meters, the chandas also. So prosody also is discussed, and it is one of the most authentic texts, Natya Shastra. After Pingala, Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra is a most comprehensive exposition on Sanskrit chandas, Sanskrit meters, as we will see in the 15th chapter, and even in Dhruvadhyaya, 32nd chapter, the definitions of the meters, the idea of meter or chandas, that is there in Natya Shastra is very much relevant, and the whole tradition of Chanda Shastra, you see, it has inherited that tradition. So so many disciplines are involved in Natya Shastra, and in some ways there are several other disciplines. They also form a part of this Shastra. Rituals, Karmakanda, mythology is there, sociology and anthropology is also there. When we deal with the first chapter, we will find that tribes are mentioned. Even on the chapter on in the chapter on pravrittis, in 13th chapter, the tribes of India and several sections of the society, they are described. So ancient Indian sociology and anthropology, you can say. Then mathematics and geometry, because for theatre architecture and the sizes and shapes of the stages and the theatre playhouses, you have to know some sort of geometry. Yoga and physical exercises, they are also to be taught to the natas, and they also are a part of this text as well. Physical exercises in the 10th chapter, the chapter on charis, that describes them. So warfare, you see, that is also arms and armaments, they are also described in the chapter on Aharya Vinay. Ayurveda also a part of Natya Shastra in some way or other, because an actor has to know various types of diseases. If he is to perform the role of a person suffering from some disease, how would he perform unless and until he knows the characteristics of a person who suffers from that disease? So he must know some sort of he must have some idea of the Ayurveda also. So many disciplines, you see, form a part of Natya Shastra. So after that we come to Bharat Muni. Who was Bharat Muni actually? This also is a very complicated problem, almost a riddle. And there are scholars who say that there was no person as Bharat Muni. He is a mythical person. Not only the modern scholars, even in ancient times, this view was aired that there was no such person as Bharat Muni, and this is a text handled, authored by many persons. This is not a text written by a single person. Abhinav Gupta refers to this view as Nastik Mata. They are the Nastik Duryopadhyayas, he says. They are the chiefs of this atheist philosophy, this Nastik Mata, who say that there was no Bharat Muni. So there is a Astik Mata which holds that Natya Shastra was written by a person named Bharat Muni, and there is a Nastik Mata which says that no such person as Bharat Muni actually existed, and this is a text created on his name. These two are the views, and I believe in the first theory, I am with Abhinav Gupta that there was a Bharat Muni. He actually authored this text, and I have reasons to believe so. There was a Bharat Muni. He is speaking the Natya Shastra, as we will see, and Abhinav Gupta gives his own reasons why it is necessary to believe that the whole thing came out from Bharat, one single person. It is possible that his disciples, his followers later on collected whatever he was saying, but they didn't want their names to appear there in the text, and everything goes on the name of Bharata, and it is the tradition upholds the view that it is from Bharata, like Mahabharata of Vyasa. So the whole Mahabharata of 1 lakh stanzas is by Vyasa. In the same way, the whole Natya Shastra, as we deal with the text from a day after tomorrow onwards, is by one single person, we can say, and that was Bharat Muni. These two views, both the Astik Matas and Nastik Matas, are right in their own way, we can say. One is one has the Paramartha Satya of Natya Shastra, you can say. It is the reality of Natya Shastra, ultimate reality, you can say. And the another is the Vyavharika Satya, the pragmatic or practical view of Natya Shastra on the basis of modern scientific analysis also, that may be acceptable. So these two views are there, and you can view the text on the basis of these two views. I am with the former view that the Paramartha of Natya Shastra is that it comes from one person, that is Bharat Muni. When we go to discuss the text, we will again take up this issue. And Natya Shastra is a Prokta text. It was spoken by Bharat Muni. The very first stanza says that I will speak Natya Shastra. And some Munis come to Bharat Muni, they ask certain questions. We will discuss these questions. And the whole Natya Shastra was spoken as an answer to these 5 questions which were raised by some certain Munis. And in the course of the replies of Bharat Muni, in response to the queries of the Munis, certain counter questions were raised. So in this way, the text unfolded, the text, came out, and it was later on, maybe it was collected, compiled, it became a Samhita that way. So that is how the Natya Shastra was composed. But though whosoever compiled and collected Natya Shastra on the basis of what Bharat Muni had spoken, they saw to it that there is an inherent unity, and that inherent unity is pointed out by Abhinav Gupta. Therefore, Abhinav Gupta says that the whole Natya Shastra is a single unified discourse. It is a Mahavakya, and that also we will discuss. And the whole narrative, how the Natya was created out of 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Samveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda, and for whom it was created, and how many components it has, and how these components are discussed in Natya Shastra. There may be 11 components, there may be 13 components, and there may be many other components, but in what way all these components, all these angas of Natya, they are discussed in Natya Shastra, and in what way Natya Shastra becomes a single unified discourse by taking up all these components of Natya, that we will discuss when we take up the text. And there are so many other concepts which I will not go into their details. And I just wanted to talk to you about some other things about Natya Shastra. Why Natya Shastra is relevant to us. And just as in the beginning I said that there may be Shastras related to Natya in other cultures countries which had Natya or theater in ancient times, they also had some kind of a treatise maybe, or some kind of a scientific discourse on the art of theater. But this Natya Shastra differs from all other theaters. The theater that is talked about in Natya Shastra, it also differs from the other theaters. If the word Natya is translated as theater, roughly in English, so the theater or Natya that is talked about in Natya Shastra differs considerably from the other theatric traditions in other countries which have fostered cultures in ancient times. And in what way it differs? Because a particular worldview percolates the whole system, and in that way also it is a unified text, because it represents a particular worldview, it represents a particular outlook for life, and it involves a particular lifestyle. In that way, Natya Shastra differs from the Natya Shastra in other traditions, in other the Natya Shastra it might have existed in other countries. So we see that the first important exposition of aesthetic theories was done by Aitreya Mahidasa in Aitreya Brahmana. Aitreya Brahmana is a Brahmana connected to Rig Veda. Mantra Brahmanayor Veda Nama Dheyam. Both Mantra and Brahmana together, they are called the Veda. So a Brahmana text is a part of Veda. And Aitreya Mahidasa, who authored Aitreya Brahmana, is a Vedic seer. And he is discussing certain core issues about aesthetics and culture in this Aitreya in this Aitreya Brahmana. Abhinavgupta refers to Aitreya Brahmana in the context of aesthetic theories. So the tradition is very much alive to the fact that these views are coming from the Vedic times, and there is a Vedic worldview that has been handed over to us. So the tradition of Nigama and also the tradition of Agama, that also we will discuss, they have joined their hands together to build up a particular worldview which is reflected in Natya Shastra. So Aitreya says that there is a Rupa, then there is a Pratirupa. There is a Deva Shilpa, then there is a Manusha Shilpa. So the whole world is a Shilpa, a poem authored by God, a piece of art created by God. And whatever a human being creates as a piece of art is the Anukrati of that Deva Shilpa, is remaking of that Deva Shilpa. So this idea, Deva Shilpasya Anukratihi Manusha Shilpam, as Aitreya Mahidasa says. And Yadvai Shilpam Tat Chanda, whatever that is Shilpa or art, that becomes Chandas or poetry or poem, Kavya also. So all these ideas that this twofold worldview, the existence of two worlds, a world created by God and a world created by a human being as an anukrati of that world. So the idea of duality, that also percolates in Natya Shastra. So we find that there are so many twos, there are so many duos in Natya Shastra that we find. You see, there are two kinds of prayogas, Abhyantar Prayoga and Bahya Prayoga. And there are two types of dharmis, Natya Dharmi and Lok Dharmi. And some other duos are there, two types of plot of drama, Prakhyat and Utpadya. So these dualities continue, that there is a given world and there is a world being created by a human being. The given world is created by the God. And the Anukrati, that is not imitation, that is creating once again through your creativity, through your pratibha. So this idea was given initially by Aitreya Mahidasa, and it percolates the whole aesthetic tradition in our country, and that Natya Shastra builds up as its aesthetic theory. So we find this unity of numbers. So these are the duos. Then there are triplicates. They are threes and threes. So many three things are there. Like so many dualities. So there are three types of theater houses: Jeshtha, Madhyam, and Avara. There are three types of sizes: Chaturasra, Vikrashta, and Ayata. So many threes are there. In the musical system, there is Tripani, Trilaya, Triyati, and so many other threes are there, like so many twos. Two gods are there, Brahma and Shiva. Two types of arts are there, Margi and Desi. Two types of Natya are there, Avidha and Sukumara. Two types of Siddhis are there, Devi and Manushi. Like the Dev Shilpa and Manush Shilpa, the Siddhi or success in a performance is also of two types, Devi and Manushi. We will discuss. They are very subtle concepts in the art of drama. And two types of Hasya are there, Swagat and Pargat. So in the same way, like the dualities, there are trinities. There are so many threes, that three levels of time. Triloki is there. Three spaces and three times are there. The Natya has three angles for its genesis: Kavi, Nata, and Prekshaka. The Kavi creates Kavya, Nata creates it on the, Nata recreates it through his performance, and then it is revisualized by the Prekshaka. And three types of different rasas. So many, these rasas have three types based on the Purushartha. That also we'll discuss. And three types of different forms of dramas are there. Three types of lokas are there. Triloki is there. And all these trinities are there. Tri Sanyoga in music. And Triprahara, the beating of drums, is also of three types. So these trinities go. They are embedded in the structure of Natya Shastra and in the structure of Natya. Then so many quadripartites are there. Quadripartites are there. Four Vedas. From four Vedas came out, you see, four ingredients, four components of Natya. Pathya, the textual part, music from Samveda, then Abhinaya, performance part from Yajurveda, and Rasa from Atharvaveda. So because there are four Vedas, so four Purusharthas are there. So four Mula Rasas are there. So correlated to these four Purusharthas or values of life, there are four Mula Rasas. That is Shangara to Kam Purushartha, Veera to Dharma Purushartha, Raudra to Artha Purushartha, and Vibhassa to Moksha Purushartha. And there is a logic behind these correlations. So because there are four Vedas, so there are four Mula Rasas, so four Purusharthas are there, so four Mul Sthai Bhavas are there. Because of them, there are four Vrittis, Bharati, Satvati, Arvati, and Kaishiki. Because an actor has four channels to express Natya, for the externalization of Natya. He has his body, he has his speech, and he has his psyche. And then he has some properties, some costumes that also he has to deal with. So based on these four channels of an actor, four vrittis or modes of our performance are there. Bharati, the vritti for his speech, Arvati, based on the robust movements of the body, Kaishiki, based on the graceful movements of the body, and Satvati, based on the visualization of the activity within, in your psyche. So these four vrittis are there because there are four vrittis, so four pravrittis are there. Four types of atodhyas are there, Tat, Avanad, Dakhan, and Shushir. Four types of mukhragas are there, Swabhavik, Prasanna, Rakt, and Shyama. Four types of nayakas are there, Dhiroddat, Dhir Lalit, Dhir Shant, and Dhirodat. They are interconnected to these four Mul Rasas, four Purusharthas, and four types of Abhinayas. So 4 types of alankaras are there in Natya Shastra. So why this game of numbers as I see it? So there is a game of number continuing in the structure of this Natya Shastra, that these are the duos, these are the trinities, these are the quadripartites, these are the fours and fours, and then these are the fives, 5 avasthas, 5 artha prakritis, 5 sandhis. So many fives are there. I need not enumerate them. There may be a long list. So why these fours are there and why these fives are there? Because there are 5 stages in life, in human life. There is a cycle of human life that involves 5 stages. And in the same way, a drama, the plot of a drama should have these 5 avasthas, arambha, yatna, and praptyasha, netapti, and phalagama. So a drama should have 5 sandhis according to them. It should have 5 arthopakshepakas. It should have 5 artha prakritis, the nature of plot. So many fives are there. So they have their interconnections with each other, and they have their interconnections with the whole worldview, which is based on seeing a type of rhythmic pattern in the whole cosmos. That there is a rhythm, there is an order in the cosmos, and a performance has to follow that rhythm. A performance has to recreate that rhythm. So therefore, there are rhythmic patterns. Even in the categories also, you have that, you recreate that rhythm of life in the performance, but the theory also, the Shastra also should reflect that there is a rhythm. So these rhythmic patterns are there, these mathematical patterns are there that reflect that rhythm of the whole cosmic view. So Natya Shastra as a text narrates or describes these mathematical sequences, these rhythmic patterns, we can say, and perhaps when we will be reading Natya Shastra in the coming 10 days, we may discover or rediscover these rhythmic patterns for ourselves. I am trying to do so. I cannot claim that I have understood the text as a whole. I am trying to explore the text, and I hope that you will be with me in this journey. And finally, why Natya Shastra is relevant to me in the world today? Because Natya Shastra is a text which teaches tolerance in this world of intolerance today, the world of intolerance that we have created today. Bharat Muni, as I see him, I believe that there was a Bharat Muni, and because of him, the whole tradition came out, the whole art tradition, the whole tradition of drama and aesthetic theory. There might have been other acharyas. Bharat Muni himself said that there were other acharyas, there were other masters of theory earlier also. Just as Panini says that there were other Vyakaranas, there were other systems of grammar. Other experts had earlier written text on Sanskrit grammar. But Panini's grammar came to us as the most standard grammar. Because of that, Sanskrit language has been with us for all these 2 or 3 millennia, because of that text of Panini. In the same way, there were Natya Shastras authored by others. But what Bharat Muni did for Natya Shastra, that he made a system by reorganizing the whole corpus of theories, and he preserved that worldview intact, and that worldview taught us to be a good human being, and that worldview also taught us the lesson of tolerance that we will see in the very first chapter. That when Bharat Muni did his first performance, and that was disrupted, it was attacked, the stage was attacked and cruelly attacked, and the Sutudhara, the director of the play, was wounded. He was lying unconscious. But Bharat Muni did not give a call for any vengeance. He didn't retaliate. Indra attacked them. Bharat Muni did not ask him that you intervene and attack. Indra saw that some hooligans or some demons have attacked the stage, and it was the performance sponsored by Indra. So Indra thought that it is my duty to punish these unruly elements. But Bharat Muni did not say that you give any punishment to them, that you attack them, you retaliate. That was not his way of life. He was a man of reconciliation. He talked to them. He talked to those demons. And ultimately they were reconciled. He adopted their system also. He adopted their system of theater. He insisted that we will incorporate their system. So the Asuras and Gandharvas and maybe other tribes in India, Bharat Muni tried to accommodate them. So he was a man of reconciliation, and he was teaching the lesson of tolerance, because a theater sustains itself on tolerance. It is not the way of a theater artist to retaliate, to have any vengeance for those who attacked. Even for the Puritans or the Jad Dharma Shastrins, they didn't allow theater. They didn't want theater to grow. And they perhaps saw it as a challenge, because there was a theater of challenge in ancient times also. So, in the last chapter also we see, in the first chapter, we will see that the way Bharat Muni deals with the whole issue of an attack on theater. And in the last chapter also, there is again a violence. And that is, you can say, a more dangerous form of violence. That is the violence of speech. That the seers living in the Himalayan territory, they are aggrieved. They are infuriated actually. Because the disciples of Bharat Muni are performing some plays which stand as a challenge before them. So they cannot tolerate the challenge. These disciples are performing the Gramya Dharma type of plays, Vidambana type of plays. They have become rustic, and they are characterizing the very deeds of those holy seers. But those seers might be having their own inner contradictions. Otherwise, why should these actors perform the parody of their life? But they didn't tolerate it, and they cursed these 100 sons of Bharata. So Bharat Muni did not, he was also a seer, he was also a rishi. He could have cursed them, but he didn't do anything. He advised his sons to tolerate, that you go on practicing. If they have expelled you as a curse to the disciples of Bharat Muni, those sages has expelled them from that holy Himalayan area. So Bharat Muni advised them to go to the other parts of the country and continue to practice theater. He did not say that you should not do such types of plays. He said that theater should preserve all sort of variety. There should be a theater of challenge. There should be a rustic type of theater also. There should be a pure type of theater also. So, in this way, Bharat Muni he teaches us the lesson of theater. And with this, the last point that I want to make is this, that Bharat Muni gives a wonderful idea of Kala Prakarsh in drama. Kala Prakarsh means stretching of the time. An actor plays with the time. He can stretch time and he can narrow, shrink the time. This idea also we will find in Natya Shastra. And with this I come to the end of my talk. Thank you very much, and I look forward to see you tomorrow and a day after tomorrow.